Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Lower Decks, Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 1, Episode 3, Temporal Edict. This video is part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Lower Decks, so I have to start with a spoiler warning for Lower Decks up to Season 1, Episode 3. So, it's another okay episode. I think this was probably the least offensive episode, and by offensive I mean it wasn't like bad and I didn't have issues with it, not that it offended me, but I mean like there wasn't anything I could point to like in the previous two episodes where I was like, that didn't work, I didn't like that, but it wasn't all that great either. I mean, there actually are a few things about this episode I didn't like, but nothing that I think was particularly like bad or annoying. It's just another okay episode. So far, I'm finding this show really unoffensive. Really just, I'm not wowed by it, but I don't think it's like, I'm not angered by it. Like, I see some reviews where people like are angry about this show and thinks it's just desecrating Star Trek. I think that's ridiculous. I think this show is respecting Star Trek a lot. And I do like how it really does capture the TNG style, particularly with the font and all that. But, and there's, of course, there's a lot of, like, jokes that mostly Star Trek fans will get. And it plays off of a lot of Star Trek tropes, which I like. But, I mean, it's funny. I enjoyed it. I laughed, but wasn't wowed by it in any way. So it seems like they're doing this tradition. It reminds me, I was going to say The Simpsons, but The Simpsons is quite different, because The Simpsons would have like the first 10 minutes of the episode be something totally different and then go in a totally different direction for the rest of the episode, first 5 to 10 minutes. Whereas here it's just like the opener, the teaser, before the credits rolls, is basically just going to be a gag, and then the rest of the episode will have nothing to do with that. Which, if that's what they want to do, I'm fine with that. I'm not particularly thrilled about it, but, whatever. Maybe there will be some good gags out of it. The one last week, I criticized it at the time with the glowing ball thingy, but I actually like that better than this week's one. This week's one, it is playing off of the trope of, particularly Next Generation, where there was tons of concerts, and they always play like this classical boring music and in 10 forward all the freaking time. And this kind of plays out the trope where, it has Ensign Bullimore doing that same old thing, like playing the fiddle or violin or whatever he's playing. And then, Mariner, of course, this isn't true style to the character, interrupts to play like loud guitar music. But I don't know, it's a bit too silly of a gag, like the whole ship was shaking and that the Klingons they were talking to on the bridge were interrupted. I mean, I don't know. I didn't particularly find it funny, and then when the Bajoran security guy came by and like ripped up the violin, so you're being too loud, like that actually actively annoyed me. I'm not sure why. I was like, because it's beyond obvious. I know it's supposed to be jokes, it's played for laughs, but it's obvious that he's not making all that noise with the violin. And I was like, that poor violin. But then again, Bulmer didn't seem to care. He was just like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, he went along with it, that he was being too loud. He didn't try to be like, oh, no, it wasn't me, it was Mariner. He was just like, oh, I am so sorry. Which I guess says something about his character, but, like, I wasn't blown away by that. Now, alright, so let's get into the episode proper. Let's talk about the whole time edict thing. The buffer time. I guess I'm trying to think what this reminds me of. This reminds me of this episode of Voyager called Critical Care, where the doctor's program was acquired by this other alien species, and they were having him like treat patients, but they had like really fucked up rules, And basically the doctor was just helping rich people stay healthier while there were poor people dying. So the doctor would, on his free time, would go and like help cure the poor people, which they were very much against because they saw that as a misuse of resources. So they put the doctor on a like a timer where he had a lot set of time to treat this patient. Like you have 5 minutes or 2 minutes to treat this patient, go. And as soon as his time was allotted, he would disappear and put him to the next patient. So I guess that kind of reminded me of this thing where they had that a lot time to do every task. I gotta say, I guess the thing that bothers me most about this episode is I think this is the first episode in which, because I haven't yet been any impressed with the captain. I'm blanking on her name at the moment, but she is a bad captain in this episode, a terrible captain. And that kind of annoyed me a bit, like that she went so overboard with, and I guess that's the gag of the episode, is that by taking away the buffer time, the whole ship was in chaos in a week, and she remained completely oblivious to it until Bulmer pointed it out to her at the very end of the episode, which just, I don't know. I mean, this is a comedy. You do have to take some things with a grain of salt. But that kind of bothered me. Not sure why. Alright, so we get a couple of jokes that were ruined and spoiled for me in the trailer. Which, I don't know why. This show in particular, like, it seems like they put all the funny jokes in the trailers. And so when I see them, I'm just like, I guess it's because I saw the trailer so many times that it kind of spoils it, like the whole joke about when she's shooting the phaser at the brig when they're testing it out, and Bowler freaks out. It's like, oh, you could have phasered me. It's like, relax, it was set to stun. Like, that was a funny joke, but it wasn't. I didn't laugh this time because I'd already seen it in the trailers several times. And then there was a joke that was spoiled for the trailer for this episode that they aired last week. So, this is the episode coming out next week, which I thought was hilarious. But it was kind of spoiled a bit in this episode where they're on the planet, Mariner and Ransom and the away team, and the Ransom was like, oh, watch this is going to be awesome. And then he just gets kicked, and it had an electrical net thrown at him, and he goes, and Mariner's like, you're right, that was awesome. Like, that was a really funny joke. I really enjoyed that, but yeah, kind of spoiled by the preview. Now the whole thing about buffered time, this is kind of gets into, I did a video recently about like my favorite chief engineer, ranking all the chief engineers, and I put Scotty quite low in the list, which a lot of people had a huge issue with, of course. But the main reason I stated that Scotty was lower in the list is because he lied about his estimations. That he would say, oh, it's going to be, it's going to be taking me 8 hours, and really he knows that it's only going to take him 4. So I made a big deal about that in my video, saying, well, then he's a liar. He's not an honest engineer. He's just scamming you. He's scamming the captain to make him think he's a better engineer than he actually is. And of course I put B'Elanna Torres really high on my list because she was straightforward with how long it would take her. When the Captain Janeway was like, no, you have 2 hours. She's like, no, when I say 4 hours, I freaking mean 4 hours. Which is, I like that kind of honesty. But anyway, so it's funny that they did this episode that's pretty much taking that whole trope and saying that, because basically all the lower decks, I don't know why. It also irks me that they actually use the term lower decks in this episode. To me, that was just like an assumed, like an out of universe nickname for lower ranking instance, but they actually use the term for it. So I don't know. But anyway, they say that it's common for the lower decks to pad their time, estimation times like that, so that they can have extra time to relax. And here it shows them drinking margaritas, something else we saw from the trailers. And it shows that what's her face, the captain, got irate when she learned about this, and so took it away. And apparently everyone needed that buffer time, that time to relax and enjoy. Now, so I thought it was interesting that they played all that. It's particularly when Tandy got called by that cat doctor, and she asked how long it would take to fix the biobed. She's like, 5 hours? And she's like, what? That's great. So it's, I kind of like that they were, because I was just talking about the whole estimation BS thing. But of course, this episode's justifying it, which I'm still very much against it. But anyway, well, at least the way Scotty uses it, because he uses it to pretend he's better than he actually is. Where these guys in Lower Decks are not using it to pretend they're miracle workers, they're brilliant. They're just using it to get some extra free time. So I have less of an issue with that. That's fine. They want some free time to relax. And of course, this episode shows what happens when they don't have that free time to relax. Now let me jump back to the start of the episode with the captain. God, hold on. I'm gonna look this up. This is really bothering. Captain Freeman, of course. Should have remembered that. Anyway, it shows her at the start saying that she's going to make a speech to Cardassian at Cardassian Prime about signing of a peace treaty. Now, they don't go into details, but of course the Star Trek nerd in me has a lot of speculation, because we do know that this show is taking place after Star Trek Nemesis, which is some years after the Dominion War. So it was after Cardassia was decimated by the said Dominion War. So I think one could assume that the Cardassians sort of need the Federation to rebuild, and so they're signing a peace treaty with them. And it's maybe not just the Federation, other powers like Klingons or whatever. They're signing this huge peace treaty so that they can help in the humanitarian efforts on Cardassia, which will go along with some of these non-canon novel material that showed that the Romulans and the Federation were taking charge and help rebuilding Cardassia. So that would make sense to me. So that was just one little tidbit. I don't know if the writers actually thought this much through, but with as many Star Trek references that there are in this show, I would think so. I would think that was a conscious effort to... I just wish they would have had just a phrase like rebuilding effort or something like that to sort of make it clear. But anyway, she's upset because she's not chosen for the mission, so she thinks it's because the ship isn't efficient enough. And then of course when those crazy people board the ship and start attacking everyone, she's like, you repel the boarders and do your tasks at the same time. It's called multitasking, like they do on the Enterprise. So it's obviously showing really huge jealousy over like the Enterprise or more well-known ships, and that's what really leads me to believe that she's a bad captain. I'm sorry, she's a terrible captain in this episode. But anyway, there's a couple of Star Trek in-jokes in this episode, such as like the alien species being obsessed with crystals. That's kind of making fun of how most one-off aliens of the week, are like have their one thing that they're known for. Like, oh, this is the species that likes to have sex a lot, or this is the species that likes to fight a lot, or this is the species that is paranoid, or whatever. They all have their one trait, and so they kind of make fun of it with the whole crystal thing, that they're obsessed with crystal. And they did remind me a bit of like the kind of aliens you would see in Rick and Morty as well. But here it had more of a Star Trek context, so it was kind of making fun of that alien, species of having this one sort of thing that defines the entire species, kind of thing. Like they're just obsessed with crystals. But And there's also the joke about the spears, which were quite, blatant about how this was referencing the original series, where there were episodes. I think Galileo 7 was one of them, where the crew members were killed, the red shirts there were killed by spears. And how Mariner jokes about, well, we live on the spaceship, we're not going to get killed by a spear and stuff. And she even blatantly references Kirk when she's like surrounded by people with spears. And then when the boarders come on the ship, Bormer is like, what, they have spears and swords? What the hell's going on? I got a phaser! Like that. That was funny. I must admit. But, I don't know. I found the whole concept, because the whole concept of the episode is that without the buffer time, the ships fell apart, and so someone fucked up and presented a piece of wood instead of a crystal, and they freaked out, and this led to them, like, attacking them, capturing the away team, and attacking the ship. I don't know, something about, especially the way Freeman was like, repel the borders and keep you working. Like, something about that was just a bit too chaotic. I mean, because this is a Star Trek show, I do expect, I know it's a silly comedy, but I expect some level of believability, even though it's a lot lower than any other Star Trek show. Because it's an animated comedy, I still expect some level. And I think this was below that level, that scene in particular. It was just too much for me. And then, I kind of found that the ship storyline was a bit annoying to me, but I really enjoyed the away team stuff. I think the interactions between Mariner and Ransom were good. In fact, I love the fact that the whole episode wasn't about Mariner and Bulmer. This is the first episode we get where they're not paired together for the main plot, that they actually give some of the senior officers more play. And there were some people complaining, I heard some speculation about Mariner being a Mary Sue, particularly after the last week's episode where she pretty much got everything right and she knew everything. I kind of fought back against that idea because it just showed that she was just a bit more experienced. She just had a apathetic attitude, and more so than any other Starfleet officer has, which I think is actually a very interesting character trait. So I didn't necessarily identify that as being a Mary Sue, but I guess I could see that perspective since she was doing everything right and she knew everything throughout the first 2 episodes. But this episode made it clear that she wasn't. In fact, if she had defeated Ransom and actually went out and fought that big, I can't remember the dude who just kept saying his name. That part was funny. If she went out and fought that big guy and won, then it would perpetuate the idea that she is the Mary Sue, but they actually went in the other direction, making it clear that she's not, because the solution was for Ransom to actually stab her in the foot and go out and fight the dude himself, and Ransom actually won. It shows that because she thought she needed to do it, that Ransom was just a bunch of hot air, arrogant fuckhead who didn't really know what he was doing and had no faith in him whatsoever. And the conversation that they had, like when she said like the rank means nothing, he's like, what? Rank always means something. And she thought that her superior experience in this matter sort of outweighed what rank which she held absolutely no respect for whatsoever. But I love that it turns out she was wrong. And that shows that she's definitely not a Mary Sue. And that Ransom actually was correct, and he knew more of what he was doing. I also found it kind of funny how when he was beating the guy up, it's like, I respect your sovereignty. And she was like, oh my God, he's so ethical. I really like that. I thought that was really cool. And it shows that she was wrong about Ransom, that he wasn't just a bunch of arrogant hot air, which frankly is what he came off has so far, because, well, to be fair, we've barely seen him in these first 2 episodes. But that's kind of what I thought of him. But I love how they sort of subverted that expectation and went the complete opposite way. And I also like how she actually respected him because he broke protocol, because he was willing to break the rules by stabbing her in the foot. But what really bothered me, and again, I know this is played off for laughs, and we're supposed to take it, take it with a grain of salt, and not be all serious about it. But for some reason, it really annoyed me that after Mariner agreed not to press charge or not to file a report so he wouldn't get in trouble, he has it during the break for not having her sleeves off. Now, I know, again, this is an obvious joke, but I don't know. I think it makes him come off as too much of an asshole. So I didn't appreciate that joke. Even if it's very clearly a joke, I didn't like it. I didn't appreciate it. Because, yeah, what an asshole. Like, she just, was willing to lie to cover him, and he's going to throw her in the break for some. But it's making it clear what the relationship is going forward. And by the way, I really didn't like the undertones of the romantic, "Oh, he's so hot," and how when she was thrashing, he's like, "Oh, that's so hot." Like, I don't know. Any of these romantic undertone things, I hope they don't explore that. That's all I'll say. So, anyway, my rating for Temporal Edict out of 10 is a 7. Very good. I think I've given every episode a 7 so far. I was almost gave this episode a 6 because, as I said, like the things about what Ransom did at the end kind of annoyed me, and how the captain was clearly a bad captain in this episode. That kind of bothered me, but it's there was enough about this episode I did like. I liked it was funny. That's the more important thing. I like the in jokes to Star Trek and making fun of some of the tropes like the concerts and the spears or the aliens with one trait. And I like the interactions between Mariner and Ransom a lot. I thought that was really well handled, and I really appreciated that they subverted expectations. So, by the way, I do have to mention the joke with the alien leader or whatever, who's being all stubborn and doing, "Oh, we have to do trial by combat," and the big guy, I can't remember his name, kept repeating it, but the big guy's like, "Why don't we actually just have a fair trial with a judge?" And, "Oh, I know, let's build a race car and we'll have a death car, build a car out of crystals." He was like, that was a good joke. That was really funny. So anyway, that's it for my review of episode 3 of Lower Decks. I shall be back next week and every week thereafter to cover Lower Decks, and also cover many other Star Trek videos on my channel, as well as covering other shows like The Expanse and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.